on this episode. This is my good friend Brad, collegiate D1 football player.
Dude, you're bringing it back, man.
Oh, man.
Woo, seems like a lifetime ago.
Not only that, is like this dude goes so hard in the gym that like he even makes me look small, which is, well, I thought was a hard thing to do, but there's a lot to Brad. I'm really excited to dive into this, his mindset, some of the things he's done over the course of his journey to success, and how really sports slingshotted that. And yeah, I'm excited to get to know you more and just kind of pick apart like some good things that you've developed over the years.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So how did football start? Obviously, football is not for the faint of heart. I sucked at it. I got snot rocketed like once and I was done.
Yeah.
Yep.
You played?
7th grade, it was a kickoff, running, boom.
Oh,
and
dude.
after that, I was just like, this isn't fun for a 6'4", 125 kid.
Ooh,
So
wow. 6'4", 125.
I was
huh?
skinny, man.
Man. So my story, I also started in the 7th grade. I grew up in Salt Lake City, and I think they called it the Ute Conference Football League. It's a little league football. Weird thing about it, over there was a weight limit. So like growing up, if you wanted to play a skilled position, you had to be under a certain weight. I was always really tall. I have big beefy legs, you know. So I was weighed like off the charts compared to this like weight limit thing. So I didn't actually start playing football till 7th grade. And I started playing, and they put a big old X on my helmet. And if you had an X on your helmet, that means you were overweight and you can only be a lineman. So I started out as a lineman, as a 7th grader. But what we do is before practice, I would just be slinging the football, and the receivers would be like lining up, and I was like throwing them routes, you know. And then the coach blows his whistle, and then I put on my freaking X-Man helmet and start blocking, right? You know, I can't say that I enjoyed football a ton, but it was crazy. Those pre-practice, route running with receivers, I started getting confidence that I was like, oh my gosh, like, dude, I got a freaking rocket of an arm.
Yeah.
And I grew up playing baseball too. And I remember I could just place the ball where I needed it to be. And especially like moving targets and stuff, like I just always felt from a young age, I was like super gifted at it. And so I remember my dad took me to a football camp, and I remember the coach blew his whistle. He's like, okay, linemen, go over here, and specialty positions go over here. And this was not a X-Man weight limit driven, football camp. And so my dad the whole time was like, okay, you have to go with the quarterbacks, if you want to pursue this. And so the coach blew his whistle, okay, linemen over here, specialty positions over here. And I chickened out and I went with the linemen. And I just remember my dad's face just like dropped, and he's just, like I know it now as a dad, you want the best for your kids, and he saw potential in me. But he was just super encouraging. He's like, listen, stick with it. Even though you're a lineman right now, like make the most out of it. Because if you learn how blocking schemes work and how to read, defensive schemes and stuff like that, you're gonna be that much better of a quarterback, right? Yeah. And so I remember that year, there was a guy in Salt Lake City. His name was Lance Rice. He went to Olympus High School, and he set the Utah State passing record. He in a single game, I remember that I think I still have the newspaper clipping.
Serious?
Lance Rice throws for 471 yards in a single football game. Not a season, in one football game. And I remember cutting that newspaper article out and getting a blue, I remember it was a blue thumbtack, and I remember thumbtacking that sucker up to my wall. And anyway, long story short, I stuck with it. Once I finally got into high school, I was able to finally play quarterback, and stuck with it. And my senior year in high school, I broke Lance Rice's single game passing record and held the record for several years up until a couple of years ago. It finally got broke. But
so there's a couple things there, right? So first off, like we almost kind of get conformed or put into a box, right? Sometimes in our life, like
the kids,
being tall, right? Being tall, it's like instantly you play basketball. No, I actually am a golfer. Like, what the freak?
Or you're a basketball player. Oh, you're a post.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, dude, I can shoot lights out, man. I'm a 2.
So like, where did that shift? Because then you say like you put this up on the wall, right, as like a goal or a vision, like, and it reminded you, like, in your subconscious, you saw that sucker, and you're like, I'm gonna do that one day.
Yeah.
There was a shift somewhere in between that whole madness, which probably really dictated a lot of decisions in your life.
I think the hard thing about my situation was just because of the institution I was part of, it dictated the course for me during those years. I think if I had full range back as a 7th grader, I would have lit teams up as a 7th grader. I really do. So I worked my tail. I worked hard. Kind of ironically, in non-football, non-team stuff. So I'd show up before practices. I remember even going back to elementary school, I played football at recess, I was always outside, working on a 3-step drop, and putting my back foot in the bucket and being able to throw, a 10-yard out pattern, if you're on the weak side hash. I mean, just like working on all this stuff, because I knew that eventually I'd be old enough to be in high school. And once I got into high school, there's no weight limit. Anybody can play any position they want to. Right. And so I had that drive. But it's just interesting that Lance Rice, I've never met Lance Rice. By the way, I would love if Lance Rice tunes into your podcast. I would love, right? But he was a motivation for me, and it's crazy. He was a guy I've never met before. But sticking that Salt Lake Tribune sports article, Lance Rice sets, passing record, it was a motivation for me every day. I dreamed of one day being a quarterback, playing under the lights on Friday night at Hillcrest High School, and I think I put in a lot of hard work. I was very goal oriented. I also had a really good receiver too, so that helps as well.
So what led to getting to Weber? Obviously you went D1.
Yeah, so
D1's no joke. I mean, when you sign up D1, it's a full-time job. It's not like you're just pitter patter, let's go get at it, right? Like it's actually there.
I mean, I had a dream of playing college sports. Ironically, I always had a dream of playing college basketball, but I'm 6'5", which is, I think there's a lot of people that play college ball that are 6'5". But
there's a hard debate out there that, basketball players are some of the most athletic players, and I'll just let that be for some of my friends out there. But,
okay. You can solve that debate maybe on a future podcast.
Yeah, that's another one. But
I was slow, white, and had like 0 vertical, So even though I was just watching the Boston Miami game right before this, totally. Loved basketball, but I just wasn't as good at it.
Miami's getting smoked. I don't understand.
Yeah,
they smoked, and then
yeah. We'll see by the time this airs. Yeah. Maybe Yeah. But anyway, with my course, I got recruited. And I was as a sophomore in high school. I'm 6'5", probably 200 pounds, And again, I had a really good arm. I just didn't know how to read a defense yet. I knew blocking schemes. I could go up to the line and I could read the interior line and change a play from a power right to a power left or a zone left, But as far as the defense goes, I would struggle a little bit. Yeah. By my junior year, I was the starting varsity quarterback. The preseason camps that I went to, Ron McBride, the coach at the University of Utah, was really, really big on my recruiting trail, and BYU was recruiting me very heavily. And at the time, BYU was a hotbed for pocket passing quarterbacks, which that's what I was. Just a quarterback that could drop back, sit back there in the pocket, and just sling the ball. And so I started telling, I wasn't coached up on this whole recruiting game, but the second BYU started talking to me, I told everyone, I'm like, hey, I'm going to BYU. I'm going to BYU. The first game of my junior year, I break my collarbone.
Oh,
So
I didn't even know that.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So my sophomore year is my first year ever playing quarterback. And I am just like learning how to read a defense, learning what a free safety is, learning the difference between, two-man zone coverage and man, all this stuff. And finally I'm like, okay, this is my stage to shine. And really your junior year is where you start getting the recognition. First game of the season, break my collarbone. This is actually a kind of funny story. I break my collarbone in the first quarter, and I played the rest of the half with I'm a right-handed quarterback. I broke my left collarbone running the freaking option. Pocket passing quarterback. They want me to do an option, really? Like, come on. But anyway, I was just in so much pain, and our team doctor was on the sideline. Scott Hansen is his name. Amazing doctor, amazing human being. And I was a very composed kid, I had a good head on my shoulders. I was very smart. I was just always like on top of my composure. The team doctor pulls me aside right before halftime, and he's like, something's wrong with you. I need to assess your shoulder. And so I was like, okay, whatever. Like, it's just a little stinger. I'll be fine. He sticks his hand like under my shoulder pads, and he's like, okay, we're taking your pads off, you're done. And I'm like, I chewed this dude out, like ripped him up and down. He diagnosed me with a broken collarbone, like right there on the sideline. He's like, you need to get to the urgent care, and they need to get this thing. And he actually set it for me right there, which was super painful. Led to more cussing, more chewing out. This doctor, like legit doctor, really reputable doctor in the area. And fast forward a couple of years, he ends up being my mission president in Thailand.
That's so sick.
So anyway, I'm totally like going off topic legit, here, man.
That's legit.
But anyway, so my whole junior year, I basically sat out. I returned for like 2 games left in the season, and I did pretty well the last 2 games of the season and kind of got myself back on the map. BYU started talking to me again, and I went back. I told every other school that was coming after me, hey, I'm going to BYU. I've already verbally committed to BYU. So Weber State was not even on the radar. And, at the time, even like growing up in Utah, you're either going to Utah or you're going to BYU.
Right.
And if you don't make it to one of those 2 schools, you might go up to Logan and play at Utah State. But like Weber State, like you don't go to Ogden, like O-Town is just like not on the radar for a Salt Lake City boy. So I fast forward to my senior year, I set the Utah State passing record. I had a pretty good season. I had a really good season. I was an all-state, first team quarterback, had a really good individual season stat wise and whatnot. BYU was hey, signing day is coming up the day before signing day. My senior year. So my football season's over. I have nothing else I can do to prove myself. I get a phone call from the BYU coach. He's like, Brad, I got bad news. I'm like, what's going on?
Day before.
Got bad news. So he says, it just so happens to be the #1 quarterback recruit in the nation is LDS this year. He flipped his commitment from UCLA, and he just notified us that he's going to sign with us if there's a scholarship available. And I'm sorry to say, but there's only one quarterback scholarship that we had on the table. So we'd love for you to come walk on. And at that point, I was like, dude, no. I'm like going into this, like I'm telling everyone at school.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the BYU swag.
Yeah.
Well, needless to say, I've never worn a BYU t-shirt since that day.
You're a good man.
And Ben Olson was the kid's name, and he was a great left-handed quarterback, Thousand Oaks, California. Great kid. He went on he went to BYU and redshirted, went on his mission, and then he flipped on his mission and ended up coming back and playing at UCLA. So I don't even think he ever played a down at BYU.
Serious.
But anyway, in this process, the coach is like, listen, let me make some phone calls. We got connections. Ended up getting a phone call 5 minutes later from the coach at Weber State, and he's like, will you please just come up this weekend and just check it out? And I was like, dude, I've been to Ogden, like, not my thing, man, but whatever.
Weber's a little different. I mean, it's a step above Idaho Central, or not Idaho Central, Idaho State.
Yeah. Well, I mean, same conference, you know. Ironically, Idaho State reached out to me as well.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going up to Ogden. And I remember the quarterback at the time, a really nice guy named Tate Bennett. Another pocket passing, 6'6", big, 230-pound, just strong-arm quarterback. And he was my host, and he was a married guy. And I remember like an hour into the recruiting visit, I was like, dude, just go home to your like wife and just enjoy the night. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm not a partier, like, you know. And the rest of the hosts were just taking us around to parties and stuff. And it wasn't my thing. I didn't drink. I was pretty straight-laced. But I had this like feeling, like just confirming to me that it was like, you need to like look into this. Like, what's going on here is good. So I came home and my parents were like, well, what do you think? And I was like, I think I'm going to sign with Weber. And they were like, are you sure you don't want to like let the dust settle? Like, you know, Coach Mack at Utah, we're still waiting to hear back from him. Like, they were really hot on your trail early on until you told them you're going to BYU. And I was like, no, I really feel like Weber State is the place I need to go. And I don't know what would have happened if I would have waited or whatever, but I knew for a fact I wanted to go to Weber State. But I also knew that I wanted to go on a mission. And I'm a September birthday, and back then you had to wait till you were 19 to go on a mission. So I would have been turning 19 like right after I graduated high school. So I just felt that it was best for me to just go straight on a mission. And Weber State said, yeah, we'll hold your scholarship for your mission. Cool. So it was kind of a weird thing. Like, I would have never dreamed that I was gonna go to Weber State. Right. But it's just the way that it's the cards I was dealt, and I think God just had a plan for me, you know, and I was in tune, and I was listening to you know, just how I felt, you know, and I felt good about it, you know, and so that's kind of how I ended up at Weber, and then my course at Weber was you know, a whole journey in and of itself as well. Right. But it's really interesting because, you know, that's like at the time football was my everything. Yep. If you fast forward to today, now as a 39-year-old, like football is nothing for me. No, I shouldn't say it's nothing. That would not be respectful.
It's a piece of you, but it's not, call it your priorities now. It's not, you know, what
I think it formed who I am. Yeah. And for that, I have a lot of like gratitude. But like what's most important to me right now is my wife. Yeah. And my family. And at Weber State, that's where I met my wife, you know. And she had a very similar, my wife Jenna, she got recruited last minute. She was out of Coeur d'Alene High School here. She was an excellent volleyball player, excellent basketball player, and she got recruited to Weber State, kind of last minute thing as well. And she went to Weber State, same thing. went to parties. She wasn't a partier. They paraded her around to all these different parties, the things that she just was not interested in. It was a snowy, foggy day in Ogden, you know, it just like wasn't even like that pretty, but she just felt like it was the place for her. And so she committed and signed at Weber State. And then we ended up, you know, meeting each other, and I had a less than stellar college football career. Like it wasn't star-studded but it was, I look back at it and it was, I would not have traded that time for anything, you know? So for me, like sports, even though I didn't make it to the NFL,
Right.
I didn't even have a star-studded like collegiate career, but it paid for my schooling and it really set me up for success for the rest of my life, you know? So I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, and I think there's like, we get momentum from going through failures like that, where we get so narrow-minded as an individual that like, hey, this is exactly what we're gonna do, or this is the exact color that car is gonna be, or whatever that like dream or that goal is.
Right.
And we forget that the journey in between getting there is actually what's teaching us and will motivate us and slingshot us to where we really need to go.
Oh yeah.
So like listening to you, you know, like junior year, you come out firing, you probably get offers, you got coaches looking at you, scouts, feeling like you're on to cloud nine, like this is amazing, collarbone.
Boom.
Switches it, and it's like, cool, like if you think about the hero's journey, there was a point there where you're like, I either get back in the saddle
Right.
and go for this,
Yeah.
or I just coast, right?
Yeah.
And you got back in. You come back in, you're like, sweet, I'm going to BYU. All of a sudden, rug comes out from under you, and you got to make the best of it, right?
Yep.
And I think we associate success so much with achievements, when in reality, those failures probably taught you more than anything else.
Oh man.
And they led you to like going through and doing hard things, and having a hard D1 quarterback career
Absolutely.
was very much probably like a similarity, like we've already talked, like me knocking doors in Sacramento, just
Right.
110 degrees and hating life. But like, I've learned so many principles, and I've learned so much self-development about myself
Yeah.
and what I need to do in order to get in the refiner's fire and get through it.
Yeah. I think, you know, going back to a 17-year-old, 18-year-old Brad Leggat mind, I think it was all about what I envisioned the outcome to be, what I envisioned the final prize to be. And now as a 39-year-old Brad Leggat, having some life experience now, I think it's so much more about the journey, you know? It's just the lessons you learn during the journey. And those lessons are hard lessons, many of them, you know?
Well, and it's, I turned 36 on Sunday, and looking back, I found a list of what I wanted to achieve when I was 35, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny, you go through it, you're like, I've achieved that and more, not the way I thought it was,
Right.
but man, I am so grateful for it.
Yeah.
The home, the community, the wife that I have,
Right.
the girls that I have,
Yeah.
like the life that I have, and friends like you, and just everybody in my life is like way more abundant than material type things, right?
Right.
And like, it's become a game now, right? Like you go back to, you played a game called football, but now there's things in life where I'm just challenging myself every day, whether it's my body percent fattage or golf or just being a flippin' dad and being present, like putting my dang phone away and just like being the dad I want to be. Like along the way, you realize like, dude, that's the fight.